Everyone, today is August 23rd, 2023, and this is the afternoon session of the Portland City Council meeting. Keelan, can you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Gonzalez.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio. Ryan.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. We will now hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. To testify before council, in person or virtually, you must sign up in advance on the council agenda at portland.gov/council/agenda. Information on engaging with City Council can be found on the council clerk's webpage. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. A timer will indicate when your time is done. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave once ejected is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, council may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Your testimony today should address the matter being considered. When testifying, state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. For testifiers joining virtually, please unmute yourself once the council clerk calls your name. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we are here, and Keelan, please read the first item on our afternoon agenda, 707.
Accept Independent Monitor LLC report on 2020 critical assessment under U.S. Department of Justice settlement agreement.
Thank you, Keelan. Mayor Wheeler, I'll hand this over to you for the introduction of the item and presentation.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Ryan, thank you again for presiding this afternoon. Colleagues, as part of its settlement agreement with the Department of Justice, the city agreed to commission an independent assessment of the city's response to the 2020 protests and riots. In the last year or so, Nick Mitchell and his team at Independent Monitor LLC have been working diligently to understand from multiple perspectives the events that occurred during this difficult time in our city's history. I will also briefly note that my office is hosting a virtual public forum tonight. The Independent Monitor LLC team will present their report to the public and answer questions. You can find the registration link and copies of related documents on the city's Trending Topics website and on the mayor's office website, as well as on social media. With that, I am very pleased to hand this over to Mr. Mitchell and his team to present their findings and recommendations. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wheeler. Am I the appropriate distance from the microphone? Audio clear?
Sound good to me. Good.
Very good.
Good here.
We are Independent Monitor LLC. We are very pleased to be with you this afternoon to have this opportunity to present our findings and recommendations. As Mayor Wheeler indicated, my name is Nick Mitchell. I think our plan here is to, I'll introduce myself briefly. I'll hand it over to the other members of the team to briefly introduce themselves. We have a reasonably short slide deck that we'll walk through that goes over at a sort of a summary level our key findings and recommendations from our year-long review of the city's handling of the 2020 protests and riots, and then we will be happy to take any questions that you may have. Again, Nick Mitchell. I am an attorney who has worked with jurisdictions at the state, local, and federal levels on police and jail reform. I'm currently the court-appointed monitor of a U.S. Department of Justice consent decree with the County of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department. And I'll turn it over to my co-panelists to briefly introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Davidoff. I have 30-plus years of law enforcement experience, much of it dealing with the training and evaluation of use of force and response by law enforcement agencies to public order.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Philip Ure. I'm a consultant
working on this project. I've spent much of the past 2 decades working in police oversight, heading up the City Oversight Agency in Washington, D.C., starting that up, and then also starting up the New York Inspector General's office that had oversight over NYPD. We're glad to bring our collective experience to this project, though.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Matthew Butis. I'm kind of a public policy background, currently the policy director for Denver's Office of the Independent Monitor. It's a civilian agency that oversees the Denver Police and Sheriff Departments.
So we were retained in May of 2022 to do a review of the city's handling of the protests and riots of 2020. And we were retained specifically in response to a scope of work that was negotiated between city officials and representatives from the U.S. Department of Justice. And sort of to set the stage for our findings and recommendations, I'll briefly outline what we were retained to do. One, we were retained to evaluate the effectiveness of PPB's crowd management training, to evaluate the city's response to the protests of 2020, the effectiveness of the incident command system, including criteria used for declaring unlawful assemblies or riots in the city, for authorizing munitions of various kinds, and evaluating communication during 2020. We were hired to evaluate strategies used by the city and strategies that were not used and should have been used, to look into communication and leadership, and then sort of globally any other factors that we identified during our investigation that impacted the city's response. I'll refer, or will refer in this presentation, to the review period, which is really a period that began at the end of May 2020 and ran through mid-November, so the period of greatest disruption on the streets of Portland. And how we did this project is that we reviewed PPB's directives, standard operating procedures, and training materials for multiple years worth of training materials. Given the length of the review period and the number of days, we honed in on a sample of days, 43 operational periods, and we analyzed the operational plans of the Police Bureau, activity logs, force reports, arrest records, and after-action reports. We examined materials associated with administrative investigations into complaints about police conduct. We analyzed extensive video of PPB officer conduct, and probably most importantly, interviewed dozens of officers, command personnel, community members, other Portland municipal employees, elected officials, and regional partners, or representatives from other regional government agencies and law enforcement agencies. And so from that sort of collective body of evidence, we issued a report just a couple of weeks ago that I hope has been made available to you. If you don't have it, we certainly can make sure that you do get copies. The beginning of the report, I think it was our view as we dug into this project that there had been a lot said about what happened in Portland. Much of it was tainted from our perspective by politics. Portland became a sort of a national talking point on nightly news programs in 2020, highly politicized discussion of the nature of the protests and riots that were happening and of the response by the municipal government. So we wanted to begin our report with a more sort of fact-intensive recounting of what actually happened on the streets. We're not going to go through all of that here, but we will highlight just a few sort of key facts that set the stage for the analysis that appears in the body of the report. So the protests ran from May 29th through mid-November. They were large daytime protests that were generally peaceful, and often smaller crowds at night, with some participants engaging in violence and destructive behavior. During the review period, the federal government sent more than 700 federal officers to Portland, which, from our review of the available evidence, significantly escalated the level of street conflict. The police response was largely handled by the Rapid Response Team, which is now disbanded, though the response was also in part handled by officers who are deemed mobile field forces officers within the PPB. During the review period, there were more than 1,000 arrests made, most of which were for relatively low-level public order crimes. Next slide. Protesters and officers both experienced significant and in some cases grievous injuries during the events in question. There was more than $15 million of damage to public and private property that resulted from the riotous or destructive behavior. The city's response to the protest caused it to fall out of compliance with its own consent decree with the Department of Justice. And in June 2021, the members of the RRT, which was the public order team, resigned en masse after a member was criminally charged associated with the use of force against a community member who was not engaged in any violence. Next slide. During the review period, PPB documented more than 6,000 estimated uses of force. Some of the early uses of force, particularly in June, led to restrictions imposed from within the municipal government by Mayor Wheeler, as well as restrictions imposed by a United States District Court judge on the kinds of force that could or could not be used by the PPB. There were other restrictions which we walked through in some detail in the report that limited cooperation within Portland's municipal government and with federal agencies. Next slide. We start the analysis in our report at sort of the highest level, focusing on city leadership and PPB command, and identifying both what worked well and I think in particular some areas that could have been handled in a different manner. Our first main finding in the report actually flowed from our interviews with members of the Portland community. When we talked to members of the community in Portland, we heard a wide range of emotions expressed. We heard anger at the PPB associated with use of force used during the protests and riots. We heard some anger about the kinds of abuse that officers sustained when they were out in the street. But one of the most sort of common expressions of emotion that we heard from Portlanders was surprise, a sense of surprise about what they perceived to be a militarized response by the Portland Police Bureau, and a sense of not being prepared for what crowd control might look like at the hands of, by the Portland Police Bureau. So it was our view, and as we sort of dug into why we were encountering so much surprise in the community, that there had not been sufficient efforts to bring the community in to understand the approach to crowd control that the Police Bureau had embraced. There weren't sort of crowd control citizens academies. There were not organized attempts to create a sense of mutual understanding with the residents of the city about the kinds of munitions that would be used, the strategies that would be employed, and the techniques that would be used. And it was our conclusion that that lack of preparation set the stage for the loss of public trust that occurred in 2020. We also found that there was insufficient internal oversight of RRT by PPB's executives. RRT was a team, again, it's now defunct. It was a team of public order specialists that had actually achieved some measure of acclaim around the country and to some extent around the world as being reasonably progressive from a public order policing perspective. There was a lot of sort of homegrown pride in the RRT within the Police Bureau and a fair amount of deference for the RRT by PPB executives. When we inquired about the kinds of scrutiny and oversight that PPB executives were exercising over the RRT, it was our conclusion that there was insufficient oversight of the training provided to the RRT, the deployments of the RRT, and just general operations of that public order team. And we believe that internal scrutiny of police specialty units is extremely important for making sure that they function effectively and in a manner consistent with the agency's overall goals and policies. We found that PPB executives did not visit the field or debrief with officers often enough during the events of 2020. That was a frequent complaint we heard from police officers, a sense that they were in the field for prolonged deployments and were not seeing enough of their command personnel visiting with them, assessing their operational readiness, their well-being, and so on and so forth. And to the credit of police leadership, that was something that police leaders here independently identified as problematic and have committed to fixing. A very important component of the incident command system and public order policing is this concept of priming police officers before they're deployed into the field. So gathering, sort of mustering together and having a supervisor charge the officers, if you will, with the rules of engagement, the use of force standards that apply, encouraging everyone to de-escalate when possible. It's very important that all officers are on the same page about those core concepts. And from our review and investigation, we found that that was not consistently happening across all of the operational periods, which may have resulted in some of the negative use of force outcomes that we saw in 2020. We also found that PPB leaders did not always enforce consistent rules of engagement with protest crowds, this was actually a complaint we heard both from protesters, from officers, and even from partner agencies, that on some nights, protesters would be allowed to approach municipal buildings or police buildings freely. On other nights, getting too close would result in deployment of munitions such as tear gas, and when those sort of rules of engagement are not consistent on a night-to-night basis, it can cause officers and community members to begin to doubt the sort of logic and legitimacy of the department's approach. And then I suppose, zooming out for a second, we also found that the city didn't do enough to preserve its network of mutual aid partners in the years before the events in question erupted in 2020. So there were ample warnings in the years before 2020 that the network of mutual aid partners that the city has long relied upon was in danger of fraying. The city, given the authorized strength of the police bureau, and how active a protest city Portland is, Portland has always relied upon other regional law enforcement agencies to come in and provide support during times of emergency. In the years leading up to 2020, there were signs that those mutual commitments, those promises of reciprocal support, were not going to be honored by some of the city's partner agencies. And from our perspective, there were insufficient efforts to preserve that network leading up to 2020. We closely examined uses of force by the police bureau during the events in question and made a series of findings. First, PPB relied too often upon civil disturbance declarations and the use of riot control agents like tear gas. We have a variety of, we think there were a variety of contributors to that and reasons why that was the case. And as we observe in the report, PPB would have been better able to reduce its use of riot control agents with crowd observation tools and methods that were not available in 2020. And we make a series of recommendations on a forward-looking basis about how to close that gap in the future. Next slide. We evaluated PPB's use of the incident command system. So the National Incident Management System provides a unified approach for government organizations to collaborate in responding to large-scale domestic incidents. PPB had a significant amount of in-house expertise in running its command post, and its incident management team was structured according to ICS guidance. However, there were not enough command personnel who were appropriately trained and had sufficient public order policing experience to step into some key roles within that incident management team. And that had an impact on PPB's readiness for this prolonged deployment or series of deployments during 2020. In particular, the incident commander position and the operations section chief position, there were not enough people in the PPB who were prepared to step into those key roles. We also found that the incident management team was not consistently effective as a learning organization throughout the review period. A key element of the incident command system is organizational learning. After every operational period, there should be a debrief, a structured debrief that involves looking at the operational goals for that operational period, the objectives, determining whether or not they were met, and if the answer is no, identifying the root cause of any failure to meet operational objectives. While the PPB did have an informal debrief process, it was much more conversational in nature. It was not structured. Lessons learned during those conversational debriefs were not disseminated to other command personnel in a structured format. They didn't feed into the next day's operational planning. And so there was a need for a more structured and rigorous debriefing process to prevent, today's mistakes from being repeated tomorrow. We also found that the debriefing process did not sufficiently cover compliance with the use of force policy or any deviations from agency policy. Next slide. We looked at the dispersal order warnings given by PPB. It did, in many cases, provide warnings before dispersing crowds with riot control agents. We found the warnings were often insufficient and not properly documented. And other key internal controls on the force used by officers were deficient in certain ways, such as the tracking of less lethal munitions. There were not sufficient systems in place to determine how many of each kind of munition had been expended, by which officers and by which teams, and the force reporting and review practices used during the review period were inconsistent with PPB's own policies. We looked at the policies that authorized and prohibited force of various kinds during the review period and found, while there were a number of strengths in those policies, there were also some notable deficiencies that we viewed as likely contributing to some negative use of force outcomes in 2020. First, PPB employed what it calls a dynamic tactic and what protesters would often refer to as a bull rush in 2020, which is when a line of officers would rush towards a group of protesters to try to get them to clear an area. And that tactic simply wasn't discussed in policy. There were no discussion of the ways in which it could be used appropriately and when it would be prohibited. And that was a weakness in existing use of force policy. The threshold for using area impact munitions was too low. There were various aspects of the use of force policy that were vague about impact projectiles and the use of OC spray in ways that we believe caused confusion for officers about when they could use those less lethal tools and munitions. Next slide. We evaluated the public order training provided by the Portland Police Bureau, and I think probably our most important finding here was that there was not sufficient oversight of the public order training program. Again, and this sort of echoes with what I said earlier, that the RRT were perceived to be the in-house experts on public order training, and there was a tremendous amount of deference for the RRT, both in terms of what it was doing on the street and the training it was providing to officers in public order techniques. And so the RRT was allowed to provide training without submitting the training to the city attorney's office for a legal review in advance, and often without working directly with the training academy. And so we found content in some of the public order training being provided that simply was out of date. We found, there was case law that had been overruled. There was information that was just incorrect, and a more rigorous, centralized review process for the training to be reviewed, legally and otherwise before it was delivered would have caught some of those errors in advance. There were some other kinds of content problems in the RRT training. There was insufficient guidance about when force was authorized and prohibited. It was our view that PPB didn't adequately train mobile field forces officers, and that the training didn't sufficiently address de-escalation and procedural justice, which are both key concepts that officers need to have in their tool belt when they're going out on public order deployments. Next slide. We made 12 recommendations as a result of our investigation and review, and I'll just briefly list them here, and if you have any specific questions, we're happy to.
I have a question. I was distracted by the last slide.
Yeah,
Could you go back?
sure.
Could you explain the visual we're looking at?
Yeah, this was an image from training provided, public order training that was provided. It is, I think it's been publicly disclosed. It is, it's vile and repugnant. It includes messages that really have no relationship to the Police Bureau's mission, values, or vision. It's included here merely to put an exclamation point on the note that a more rigorous review process would have caught content like this and made sure that it was never delivered to officers.
That's exactly what I needed. I needed to understand why it was suddenly in this
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah.
So I needed to hear language like you just gave. Thank you.
Thank you for prompting me to explain that.
Well, not to belabor the point, but it's such an inflammatory and political statement embedded in training materials, and it's precisely where we don't need politics and we need clear heads. So it was repugnant when it was first published, and it's difficult to look at now as we process how to go forward as a city. So anyways, not to
I
belabor
didn't
the
want
point.
it in the public, I wanted to make sure we talked about it while I was in the public record. So yes, it's been seen in the media and other sources, but
Yeah.
this is the first formal look at it. So that's why we just had this dialogue.
Thank you. Yeah. We made 12 recommendations. The first is that, and we put this first because of its importance, the city must rebuild its mutual aid network. The city, as I mentioned before, given the authorized strength of the Bureau, how active a protest city Portland can be, the city will again need its partners, and that were not available to it in 2020. It will need its neighbors at some future point. Now, the city, of course, does not control what other government entities choose to do or not to do, but we encourage the city in the strongest possible terms to work very hard with other regional law enforcement partners to address the concerns that they continue to have. We interviewed many of them during this investigation. They continue to have concerns about whether or not they will be indemnified if they send officers to support the city in times of emergency. We encourage the city to work very closely with them to address those concerns. We mentioned in the report that given the important role that the Oregon State Patrol had in trying to fill that gap, that mutual aid gap in 2020, we think OSP could be a good partner in trying to hammer out new intergovernmental mutual aid agreements. But this issue, we put it first because we think it's just that important.
Nick, I see the mayor has his hand up. Mayor Wheeler?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for including this, and obviously I agree with this. I'm 100% confident that the chief and the police bureau agrees with this, but I don't want anybody to think we did not try. There were numerous meetings with not only our regional partners, but our state partners. And for the record, I want you to know that I offered complete indemnity. So that if people are still telling you indemnity is an issue, I'm not sure where that's coming from. In further discussions with them, you might discover there are some other issues that are beyond the control of the PPB. It was often asked whether or not I asked the governor for the National Guard to help patrol facilities so that our officers could be out on the streets in the numbers they need to be out in order to be safe. I want you to know I asked on at least 2 occasions for the National Guard, and I was denied both times. So it's not like we didn't care about mutual aid or see mutual aid as critical. I agree with you 100% that we need to find a way to go back and facilitate our region to yes.
Thank you for that clarification, Mayor. Anything more on that first recommendation?
I guess, obviously, the mayor is the deepest functional expert among the electeds here. I guess just what were the biggest gaps outside of National Guard that could have been of assistance at the time? I mean, certainly the sheriff was involved at times, but from your vantage point, where was the horsepower that we really needed and could have expected in other instances that wasn't present for 2020?
Yeah, well, that I can give some opinions there, but I'm not an expert on everyone else's operational readiness. I can tell you that Washington County was a traditional partner agency, as I understand it, that stood shoulder to shoulder with Portland in other prior emergencies, and there was a very significant jury verdict against Washington County in 2018 associated with, I believe, the execution of a warrant, deputies from Washington County who executed a warrant with officers from the PPB, and Washington County, as I understand it, was not indemnified associated with that event. I think there was a $7 or $8 million verdict that may have been reduced on appeal later, but that caused Washington County to withdraw from the mutual aid relationship, and they were traditionally a significant partner for the city. So that would be one agency that could have provided some of that horsepower, to use your words. And I'm sure there are others. We interviewed other regional law enforcement executives who said, and it wasn't just indemnification, there were political issues at play that caused them to worry about sending their people into Portland also. I don't know, I think the chief is here. He may have some other insights into some of the other traditional partner agencies that could have stood shoulder to shoulder with Portland.
What were the political barriers to mutual aid, just so we can be explicit about that?
Well, we heard over and over again that I think what we said in the report was that there was a fracture. There was a perception that there was a fracture within Portland's municipal government, that the police were being asked to do a particular job in protecting the city, and were being criticized in certain ways that were perceived to be unfair by other local law enforcement executives. And they were concerned about sending their people into an environment in which they might be criticized in ways that were perceived to be unfair. I can't, I think it's worth exploring in the conversations about building and rebuilding the mutual aid network. To the mayor's point, there were efforts to address the indemnification issues. I think there were some political issues that were interfering with the desire to send officers into Portland, and that needs to be on the table and explored as you try to rebuild those relationships.
And just one last note, I don't want to belabor this, but you led with it, and it's a significant issue in public safety, certainly in other parts of the public safety world. Mutual aid is a central component. You highlight an example of Portland Fire denying resources to PPB, and I just during my tenure that won't happen again. But was there any other public City of Portland resources that were denied to PPB at crucial times?
We heard some concerns expressed about concrete jersey barriers to keep fencing upright, and maybe some kind of other, I don't remember all the particulars on that, public works type support for police operations that was not always provided in the ways that the Police Bureau felt to be necessary.
Thank you.
Commissioner Maps.
Yeah, Commissioner Gonzalez, this is before I took over the portfolio, but if I recall correctly, I think there might have been some coordination challenges between PBOT and the Police Bureau at the time. Maybe we had some mid-trucks that could have been helpful in this space, but at the time there was not a political consensus on how to deploy those, is my recollection.
So I was just chatting with Heidi Brown. I think it might be important to have her come up and give a little bit of more context at this time. And maybe just slide in. Make some room for
Good
Heidi.
afternoon.
Someone bring her a chair, please.
Mayor, council, and I'm just going to be brief. I don't want to interrupt it, but I did want to take a moment, if I could, and just respond on the mutual aid and assure you that our office, Mike Porter in our office, who's assigned for general advice to the Police Bureau, is working with Chief Lavelle on our mutual aid agreements, and that is something that we were aware of and knew was important, and appreciate that Nick Mitchell and his team highlighted that. But I did want to assure you and anybody who's watching that that is a priority for both our office and the chief, and that we've already started reaching out and engaged in conversations related to that.
Thank you.
Heidi, can I ask a quick follow-up question? So in this context, are mutual aid agreements formal agreements like a written IGA, or is it more informal understandings?
They are written intergovernmental agreements, and they provide for that reciprocal aid that we would provide to them, say Clackamas County, Washington County, Multnomah County, Sheriff's Office, Oregon State Police. I know even Vancouver, Washington has come over at times and provided mutual aid, so we can have agreements that are pretty widespread, and we'll respond to assist them as well. Maybe they don't need for protests, but they have other needs that they might call on us for, and so those are common, but they are contractual agreements, and we would bring them to council.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Heidi, just conceptually, I mean, underlying mutual aid is reciprocity, right? That is a cornerstone. You come when we ask for help, we come when you ask for help. And what, in terms of suburbs and some of and even including Clark County, what are the big asks from us?
Commissioner, this predates my time, and because it's a little outside of the labor and employment and DOJ realm until now, that I'm not as familiar with how they've called on us, but I'm sure Chief Lavelle could probably better answer that question.
Yeah, if there's a high level, I don't necessarily need to go deep on this right now, but just conceptually, particularly as, there's the concern about to what extent political could be a barrier to healthy mutual aid relationships, and just trying to, big picture, what do they want from Portland Police, and what do they perceive they haven't been able to get outside of the indemnity question?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner. And this is really probably more reflective of 2020 than today, because we are re-engaging with our partners around that conversation. Indemnity is one piece, but to go back to 2020, I think a big part of it was, in general, the political environment. A lot of our partners who would previously come into Portland and work crowd control events with us were reluctant to do so in terms of what was going on in 2020. They looked at it as, you know, you've got a city that's limiting its police officers' tools, their ability to communicate with other federal officers who would come in to do crowd control at the federal buildings at the time. And they weigh it as, you know, I'm going to send my folks into that environment to make arrests that at the time really were not getting prosecuted. And they're like, we're going to take on the risk of injury to our folks, lawsuits, and they kind of weigh it out as a business case in some respects. And it's usually not, you know, only the sheriffs or chiefs in those places, it's their political leaders as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Heidi. I think we turn it back to you, Nick. And actually, I just have a very open question. So you're giving this report, and clearly our own internal leadership would like to respond, and we want to ask them questions. Would you like to finish the report and then have them come up? I don't know. What's your preference?
This is your show, so I'll, you know, whatever would be most useful for you. We're flexible either way. I think just to follow up on the Chief's point, and maybe to respond to your question, Commissioner Gonzalez, I understand that one of the significant resources that Portland has that many neighboring jurisdictions don't have is, you know, pretty high-level tactical capabilities with a CERT team that can handle, you know, all kinds of significant tactical emergencies that many smaller jurisdictions just don't have. So Portland also has terrific training resources. You know, the training facility is quite good. We spent quite a bit of time out there. It's a resource that not every jurisdiction is going to have. So Portland has a lot of assets that it can put on the table from a reciprocity perspective.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think the dialogue is what's most important, but
Yeah.
carry on, and we'll go with the flow.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt as at will and as
And
needed.
I'm grateful the chief came up and reminded us this was a specific moment in time.
Yeah.
And so people responded differently at that time than they would today. So
Yeah,
thank you, Chief.
that was a very important point.
Yeah.
Our second recommendation is that PPB must dramatically reduce its reliance on crowd dispersals with riot control agents like CS Gas at public order events. And we have some specific recommendations about how to do that in the report. PPB must strengthen and clarify its public order and use of force directives. And we, again, have specifics in there about the changes that we recommend. The city must ensure that PPB directives related to internal controls during public order events are followed. The RRT, as we've already discussed, is now defunct. The city still needs a public order team to respond to civil disturbance in this city. The current architecture is, from our perspective, insufficient. The use of mobile field forces officers who have minimal public order training in a city that has the kind of history of protest activity that this one has, it's just not enough. And so we believe that the city needs to create a new and better, more rigorously scrutinized, more tightly controlled public order team that it can deploy in times of emergency. The new, and that dovetails very nicely with the next recommendation, the new public order team must be rigorously scrutinized by PPB executives, overseen by Portland's new oversight agency, and what we mean by overseen there is not in any way administratively controlled, but complaints of alleged misconduct should be overseen by Portland's new oversight agency and transparently introduced to the public. The public should not again be surprised by the approaches, tactics, and munitions that the PPB will use during crowd control or other public order deployments. And we have some specific recommendations in the report about how to bring the public in to educate them and sort of partner with the public on this new effort. The city must continue to improve its public order training program consistent with recent National Tactical Officers Association standards. So the NTOA Public Order section has released a set of standards for public order teams nationally with sort of different levels of specialization and advancement. We recommend that the city use those as a set of guidelines in enhancing and strengthening the public order training program. PPB policy should require chiefs to be engaged with and visible to officers in the field during public order deployments when possible. Next slide. PPB should prepare a deep bench of leaders to serve as incident commanders and operations section chiefs. As we did this review, because of the relatively shallow bench of incident commanders and operations section chiefs, which are really two of the key positions on an incident management team, we discovered that some people serving in those roles were working for weeks and weeks and weeks on end without a single day of break. And for any one of us, our performance would degrade with that kind of strain without a break. So the bench needs to be deepened so that never happens again. PPB should develop a pre-operational briefing checklist and hold supervisors accountable for providing comprehensive briefings to officers before public order deployments. PPB should formalize the debriefing process for public order deployments. And finally, we've been asked to return in 6 months to evaluate the city's implementation of our recommendations. The report that we published was our Phase 1 report. We've been asked to return to publish a Phase 2 report assessing the implementation of our recommendations. And so our final recommendation is that the city should do some self-reflection and produce its own detailed self-assessment in 180 days, reflecting the steps it took to implement these recommendations, any successes it's had, any failures, key obstacles, and any data reflecting the impacts of its implementation of these recommendations. So that we'll end the presentation there, and certainly happy to continue engaging in dialogue with you as needed.
Yeah, thank you very much. If that concludes your presentation, why don't we do this? Do we have public testimony?
We do.
Okay, colleagues, let's go ahead and hear that first. Yeah? You wanted to ask questions for public testimony?
Can I just out of curiosity,
Okay.
I don't know what the runner show is. Are we going to receive a formal presentation or response from the police bureau, or are you guys just here to kind of respond if we have questions? Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, first up, we have Mark Porras online.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, can you hear me?
All right, go ahead and you have 3 minutes.
Great. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Mark Porras. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an ordinary Portlander trying to raise a family, and I'm testifying today as a member of Portland Cop Watch. We appreciate that the city has upheld the requirement of paragraph 189 of the U.S. versus City of Portland Settlement Agreement for this independent evaluation of PPB's handling of the 2020 protests. It's more than a little disappointing that the review had to be done at all after PPB conducted 2 internal reviews, giving themselves high marks for their work, injuring, gassing, and traumatizing thousands of ordinary Portlanders trying to march in support of Black lives. It's also too bad that most of the conclusions are those that could have been made while the protests were still ongoing, or at least in early 2021 after they subdued, but this does show that the monitoring group used common sense in writing their report. So here we are again to talk about PPB's behavior during the 2020 protests, 15 months after IMLLC was retained and 2 3/4 years after the last protest took place that the consultants reviewed. The report is easy to read and broken down into 5 main sections, including a conclusion with 12 recommendations that we mostly agree with. We appreciate the inclusion of a glossary, which to the best of our recollection is our first time seeing the term dynamic used as a synonym for bull rush, where a line of officers runs at a group of protesters, forcing them to flee. We're uncomfortable with how the word riot is used so frequently in the report without delving deeply into whether PPB used the term appropriately. We do, though, appreciate the recognition that PPB often relied on unlawful assembly declarations when other less disruptive tactics could have been used. Along the same lines, the report also acknowledges PPB's overuse of riot control agents like CS gas. The report calls out that there's no centralized record that aggregates all of PPB's unlawful assembly declarations during the review period, or the reasons why they were issued, the tactics used, and the relevant outcomes. A learning organization should be eager to gather and study such data in order to do a better job next time. The report also calls out the incident management team's inconsistent preparation and debriefing as being indicative of a bureau that continues to struggle to learn from its own mistakes. We appreciate the ample acknowledgement of the community's anger and pain caused by the rapid response team and broader PPB tactics, which makes us wonder whether the proposed remedy of making a new professionalized crowd control unit really is the best idea. We do appreciate, though, that the report calls for this proposed future unit to be scrutinized far more diligently by PPB management, and we especially appreciate the suggestion that they be transparently introduced to the public. This should include the individual officers by name, as well as the proposed recitation of the tactics and weapons the unit uses, and an honest Q&A session allowing plenty of time for community feedback. The city does have a habit of running out the clock by making presentations so long that the community has little role in such forums. And to take the suggestion further, PPB should also transparently introduce all of their sworn officers to the public. At the very least, there should be public rosters listed for each of the 3 precincts patrol officers. How can we have community policing if the community doesn't even know who the police officers are? Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
Next up, we have Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch, online.
Welcome, Dan.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor virtually and commissioners in person. My name is Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm with the group Portland Cop Watch also. And I'm also on the steering committee of the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and was appointed by City Council in 2021 to serve on the Police Accountability Commission, but I'm not speaking on behalf of either of those groups today. Just to pick up a little bit on the use of the word riot that Mark was talking about, I'm surprised the word riot is in the title of this document. It was introduced on City Council agenda that way. That word riot is very inflammatory, and it should have just been about protest actions. We once again appreciate the recommendation that PPB dramatically reduce its reliance on riot control agents and projectiles like CS gas and rubber ball grenades. However, we are uncomfortable with the suggestion that the PPB get back in the habit of recording protests unless there's criminal conduct present, which would make such recordings lawful under ORS 181A250. The report seems to think that a court ruling in favor of the ACLU, which led to the PPB ending their live stream of the nightly protests, was a hindrance. A more careful reading is that the city took the ruling from only video where there are crimes to never record a protest. So the problem is not the law, it's how the city interprets the law. We are wondering about the RRT's policy of embedding fire bureau medics with cops, which turned them into de facto accomplices to the police actions. There's no recommendation that this policy be maintained if and when a new crowd control unit is formed, which we think should lead to rethinking this practice. Much like forcing Portland street response to attend camp sweeps, this mixing of different kinds of first responders will only spread community distrust of police onto Portland Fire and to PSR. We appreciate the recognition that riot gear makes cops appear over-militarized and suggesting that when officers show up, they not look like robo-cops. As stated in the section titled, "The city was not transparent with the public about its strategies, tactics, and munitions for public order policing, which set the stage for a loss of public trust," many Portlanders were astonished by what they perceived as an overly militarized response by PPB. We're impressed that the consultants looked at over 500 videos and appreciate the effort the team made to visit Portland, appear before the PCCEP, and conduct interviews with a wide range of participants and observers of the 2020 protests. As noted in the report, this included a discussion with multiple members of Portland Cop Watch. We're glad that IAM LLC makes reference to the Citizen Review Committee's thorough and thoughtful recommendations about crowd control. It's too bad the Chief's response, which was recently also transmitted to the PCCEP, is very cursory. In fact, when PPB put forward the crowd control directive for public review, they included comments they received over several years proposal, even though it was supported by both the PCCP and the Training Advisory Council. A few tidbits would make the report more readable, including putting more hyperlinks in the endnotes, having things that are on file with the author available for the public, even if they have to be redacted. When an organization is paid to do an evaluation for the city, they should also turn over all the source material to the city and make it easily available for the public. In closing, we thank you for the opportunity to comment on this long-awaited report.
Thank you, Dan.
Next up, we have Ashley Schofield online.
Hello, Ashley. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Yep, my name is Ashley Schofield. I use she, her pronouns. I am a mother, a volunteer, homeowner, a white-facing woman with Indigenous ancestors. I come here today with my own voice, my opinion, but I am also a member of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, which was reported in the report, named in the report. I came here after reading the report. I wanted to make note of the report's, theme and message around community involvement and how policing works and happens in our city, and wanted to note on that tension that was building before 2020. And just want to make sure that that while we talk about the semantics of the mutual aid with other counties, that we're also remembering that Portland was changed after 2020. I know myself was changed. I know my community. I know the way that I speak to my son about policing has changed. I am still very angry about what happened. But like myself and like others, we are now taking going to other arenas like community meetings, and we're showing up and we're reminding you all that the way that policing, the status quo of policing in this city, it no longer works for us. But what I really wanted to comment on today, and just thank the report for definitely emphasizing that the need for community input could have helped alleviate what happened in 2020. And as the commissioner, I'm still confused what the commissioner could have done to prevent or filled those gaps with communication and understanding about what could have been done, because people were angry and we needed leaders out there, and we needed them out there to say that we hear you. Instead, we were throwing bullets. I've already come to this space and told you what happened while I was out there in 2020 and what I saw. So I'm not going to talk about that here, but you all know, you've all heard the stories, you know, they're real. And we can't miss on this opportunity to have real, authentic, community engaged policing. And what does that mean? I think that means showing up into the spaces the communities are, right? It's really hard for people to come here if you have a full-time job like myself, or you're a parent, or you have multiple jobs. So where are you going out to find people to bring this discussion to the community? PSEP really does provide a great space for that. But another example I just wanted to say and remind you of is the town hall this evening on the report was not at all advertised to the community in the way that proves that we really care about that. We really want people to know in the community what happened. So I just wanted you to think about that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Keelan, is that it?
We have one more.
Oh, one more. Right.
Sangha Demetria Mabaklang Hester.
Welcome, Sangha.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Again, my name is Sangha McBackland. And to set the tone for 2020, because I was a protester out there protesting for 120 or 80 something days and was arrested. But around what was going on was our mayor politically wanted to be just like Donald Trump. So therefore, that's why there were $75,000 more called in of tear gas to be delivered for us to be tear gas. How Don't Shoot Portland did their own report about the new tear gas that they used on us, and about them breaking limbs, handling people, fighting people, not just bull rushing, but having the Proud Boys kettle us and beat us. All of these things should have been in that report. And then after the 180 days of the recommendations, what's going to happen? There's no consequence for the police. There's no consequence for the mayor telling the police to do all of the things they did to us, not even abiding by their own rules. You're saying right now in this whole report, they did nothing they were supposed to, but nothing is happening to the mayor. He's still the police commissioner. Nothing's happening to the police that did this. You can't even get an apology, but Joanne can get an apology in 5K of her incident with the police. then how valid is this report? Who really did you talk to? Did you talk to the protesters that really got all of the beatings that the police did with the coincitement of the mayor co-signing, telling them to make us feel it, making sure that he knows that we're feeling the pain that he's inflicting on us for exercising our human rights. In the operations of the rapid response team, he gave them the okay, but nothing ever happens to the police or the mayor or the police commissioner. Nothing's going to happen because all this is recommendations. Everything is always a recommendation. And who has the final say so? The white supremacist that has this going on, which is the mayor, Ted Wheeler, and all the commissioners and the police. Y'all have the final say so in all of this. And y'all are the ones that created this system and keeping these slave catchers out here to keep trying to kill us. And the more that we try to fight, that you try to kill us. But we're here to let you know that Black community is control is here, and that's what it's about. Uhuru, and that means freedom.
Okay, thank you, Sangha. Does
That
conclude
completes testimony.
Okay, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and keep the panel up here if there's any more questions for them, colleagues. And then we could have the chief and Heidi come up. Does that work? Yeah. Okay.
I had some questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner
I wanted
Gonzalez.
to hone in on incident commands as used in your report. In looking at other jurisdictions, at other police departments, for these type of commands, whether we're going to call it riot or public disbursement, what's your term of art outside of riot, just for crowd control in this environment?
You want to take that, Pete?
In general, Commissioner, the term of art is now public order because the goal is to maintain public order.
So in public order incidences, what does this command center look like in other cities? And what is specifically incident command? And to what extent is it integrated with other public safety bureaus? And to what extent is it sort of isolated within police? I'm just sort of curious how police is arranged relative to others you've seen for these type of incidents.
Well, Commissioner, I can speak to my experience, which is primarily in the National Capital Region. And I will say that Portland, I think, was progressive in terms of actually providing public order specific incident management. And they I'm not sure how familiar you are with the federal requirements, but in about 2004, it was a federal edict. National Homeland Security Directive, I believe 5, said if you want federal funding, you need to do National Incident Management System. So in general, I think Portland may have been ahead of the curve in applying it. In the National Capital Region, obviously that happens fairly frequently, but I do work with other organizations such as IACP and the FBI National Academy Associates and such. Major cities in general are better at this than most other cities. So the issue, I think, with our recommendations was not so much the lack of it, but the fact that this took 180 days. So they had, if it was a 2-day event, you have trained crowd management incident commanders. But for 180 days, they didn't have the bench to do it in terms of that. So in general, that's separate from the learning recommendations we make. But in general, the fact that there is an incident command system stood up at a remote location, which is best practice for doing that. So you have discrete ground commanders and discrete incident commanders who in theory have a much broader base of knowledge than someone who may be leading a contingent on the ground focused on the problems right in front of them. So in general, my general feeling is that Portland was probably ahead of the curve and for the majority of the United States and on par with major metropolitan areas.
That's helpful, and I'm going to repeat back part of what I think I heard there is that, but 180 days is such a high stress in terms of systemic impact that's just hopefully we won't see that again in another 10 years, or, you know, you can't bank on that, but we're talking about a pretty extreme scenario, and that's going to put stress on any structure you have in place. That doesn't excuse anything, but it's just in terms of what was the capability we had going in was exposed to a once in a X amount of years incident, and it's going to stress any system.
That's my opinion, I believe. I think the opinion of the group here. I've been involved in incidents that are several days or a week, maybe two for some of the incidents surrounding things like January 6th, where you have people stood up, and actually having to deal with sustained, a coordinated, large protests and associated criminal activity within at times. This is unprecedented to my knowledge in the annals of American law enforcement.
And the other sort of less specific to 2020, but just trying to understand going forward, best practice on the integration of public safety bureaus specific to this type of incident. So we have public unrest, riots, broadly defined. Just curious what, you know, what extent do other cities pull in their emergency management team, and just what does incident command look like as an integrated, or is it simply police that typically would be the incident command in this type of scenario?
In general, for events like this, the standard calls for a unified command with various stakeholders having command personnel there. But, you know, for a fire, the fire bureau is going to be the lead. For a crowd management event, it's going to be the police department, and then working on a whole of government approach to mitigate the problem, because as we talked about mutual aid for the first time, these large-scale events almost by definition exceed the resources of any one agency. And so you need to have a whole of government approach and the ability to do that. And then obviously, as you know, as different government agencies are going to have an impact on what happens in the event. So you have a coordinated response. So the public, who may not have that nuanced view of what the government is doing, it's simply the government doing that. So if that answers your question,
It does, yeah. It does. Maybe I'm not sure who would answer this question, the next one, but the critiques of policies in a rearview mirror, right? So as well as for training. I guess the question is, how do we thread the needle between learning from past experiences, prescribing compliance with the law, with our own values as a city, against operational flexibility for what people see in the field? And, you know, just trying to thread that needle on a go-forward basis. You know, hopefully this was a once-in-a-100-year incident that we dealt with in 2020. That's probably too optimistic, but we have a lot to learn from it. That doesn't mean the next incident is going to be exactly like what we dealt with in 2020. So I'm just sort of curious what's the best practice there in trying to learn from mistakes, get better, but also creating space for operational flexibility to face whatever's coming next.
Well, I can answer, then put it over to policy experts such as Mr. Batiste, who is a public policy manager. My general view of policy is they give you the best guidance possible, putting a bright line what you may not do, and trying to provide you the tools to act as you should in an event. Obviously, we don't have foresight. We can't see every event coming up, but they can allow best practices. And for events like this, and linking this to some of the other recommendations we do, there is a need for specialization in this area of law enforcement. It is a high-risk, low-frequency area where you have very high demands on personnel, which, and I will say again, Portland was fairly progressive. Much of the country, and one of the reasons standards have come out, have not looked at this as a specialized area of law enforcement. So having the policy that it can help give you the tools you need to do that, and also it's, in my view, policy or where to get everyone on the same page, not only within the agency but within the region, but also with the community. So we know beforehand what comes up, and there will of course be scenarios that aren't covered by policy. Then you just want your personnel hopefully to make the best decisions they can.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a very nuanced and rich question. I think to build on that, you know, policy is, provides the rules of the road, what's acceptable, what's lawful. You know, there are lots of use of force matters have been sort of litigated to the nth degree, and policy creates the framework that officers sort of have to operate within. It's really training where sort of the operational flexibility is taught and it's experience in the field. You don't really want to be overly restrictive about sort of, you know, the operational posture that anyone's going to take in policy. You're just giving the rules of the road, and it's really in training where a lot of that kind of gets hammered out and officers sort of understand how they can approach different situations they face in the field.
Got it. One last question for now, and turn over to my colleagues. In terms of the community interviews that were performed, and I'm going to make an observation and then I'll get to my question. How Portlanders look at the events that occurred in 2020, you are going to hear a broad diversity of opinions on what transpired, what should be learned from it, how it should shape the city going forward. There is no one Portland opinion on there. There are a multitude. And you heard from some of those folks that testified just now, certain perspectives on it. I disagree on a number of the things that you heard. Don't disregard the seriousness of some of their perspective, but there are other perspectives on what occurred. I guess so, this gets to my question. What was your methodology for soliciting community input for purposes of your report? Just high level, sort of curious.
I can make a few observations about that, and Phil, you may have some additions there. I think you're absolutely right. We heard a diversity of opinions. I think one thing I'll say about Portlanders is they're not shy about sharing their opinions. From whatever perspective, they're not shy. And we certainly heard strongly voiced opinions on multiple kind of sides of this issue. We participated in a extremely well-attended public forum on one of our first visits to Portland, where we heard from the community. We set up an email address to receive feedback, and did receive feedback from the community on some of the issues that we ultimately were investigating and reviewing. We were in contact with community groups of various kinds who are engaged in public safety issues in Portland to hear from them and hear from their perspectives. There were other sort of outreach attempts that Phil may be able to kind of shine a light on.
Yeah, the community forum that we participated in October of last year, that was well over 100 community members, and that had, where we really saw the anger come through. I mean, we knew obviously from the public accounts and the reporting that the community was upset, but that kick-started it into high gear. And as a result of seeing various representatives of various groups speak at that forum, we then honed in on some of the other groups that had been involved in monitoring police behavior over the years. In Portland, even when I was working for oversight agencies in DC and New York, I was aware of some of the public discussions that were going on in Portland, but it was I would say the community forum that kicked it into high gear, and not everyone wanted to talk to us, but we felt that, you know, through the variety of interviews and discussions that we had with community members and organizations and lawyers representing community groups as well, that we had a good sense of the anger, consternation, and surprise. You heard in our presentation that, you know, one of the reactions we heard from community members was surprise. Some were surprised, some weren't surprised. But we thought we captured that through our discussions with community members, though.
And to follow up on Phil's point, we wanted to get as broad a range of perspectives as possible. We also talked to family members of police officers who were in the field for weeks at a time, spouses who talked about the impacts on their kind of home life. So we tried to be as, as broad-minded as possible in gathering feedback from the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Matz.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation in this report. This has been very illuminating. I think you have roughly 12 recommendations. 2 of them call for the creation of a new specialized public order team, I think you call it. Can you unpack that for us? What is that? Yeah, for my education, and I also think for the education of folks walking at home. Intuitively, what are we talking about here?
Commissioner Mapps, I will start by talking a little more on my prior comments. This is an area of law enforcement which long has not been specialized in many areas of the country. In fact, you heard from our opening comments that Portland's RRT received national, international recognition. The demands placed on an officer during civil unrest are extremely high, but traditionally, training is very low. In many areas of the country, you may have had a few hours in a police academy and then get sent to an environment where you're facing a high degree of personal danger. You could get hurt. You may face civil or criminal liability for your actions. You may not have been prepared for things. So the idea being that we need officers who are specifically trained to operate in that environment, because it's such in this country where the First Amendment is something that we put such reverence on, but it's not absolute in that we also have to balance the needs of the community. You don't have a First Amendment right to burn someone's store down, and so we need officers who can work in that environment, who can separate out people who are actually violating the law, and actually we need to take criminal enforcement versus people who just may be loud and doing things. And anecdotally, I remember one of my teams went to assist the Metropolitan Police for a papal visit, and there was someone on a PA. One of my officers was getting upset. This is right across from the White House. And they said, "Oh, we need to do something. That's annoying." I said, "That's the sound of freedom. There's someone across from the White House who can get on an amplification device and make noise. That's freedom." So we need officers who understand that, who can cooperate that, who can deal appropriately and proportionally using de-escalation when they have to use force, who also at the same time can also communicate and work with members of the crowd and also the larger community to achieve that public safety objective. So that's why you need specialized training. The general police training does not give you that ability. And, and anecdotally, when I responded to the Baltimore riots with a team, there was a jurisdiction in Maryland that sent, I think, 22 officers, 18 of which were hurt because they were not trained for it, whereas my jurisdiction, we brought a whole team and we did not have those injuries because we trained to operate in that environment. So that's what Portland needs to be able to do that, to have a team who can operate that, balance people's rights, deal with those who are violating the law and not operating under the First Amendment, and allow general everyday policing to occur in that contentious environment, and hopefully keep it from unrest from occurring.
Thank you. That's very helpful. A quick follow-up question for a city of Portland's size and Portland's character. Do you have a sense of how many officers we should run through that training?
In general, in my opinion, and I think the team may share this, for a city with such a rich history of First Amendment activity, I think the course they've embarked on, where everyone's receiving a certain amount of training, makes a lot of sense. I think that will supplement a larger team, and coming from a jurisdiction slightly bigger. Having 60 to 100 officers might be reasonable depending on the demands, with the understanding, as we talked with mutual aid, for a truly big event, for an extended event, you need to find a bench somewhere and people you can call for help, hopefully who have the same philosophy and training who can operate in that. But there's not this is a social science versus a hard science. So sure. you do what you can support and can, and what they can sustain. And in my opinion, with the requisite training, versus having someone on a table of contents as this is part of my team. I'd rather have a smaller number of people who are actually trained in accordance with standards rather than having a larger number on paper. So those are the decisions that the chief is going to have to make to try and find out that balance.
Thank you. And I said that would be my last question, but let me do one more follow-up. if I recall, so if I understand it, the new team that you proposed would kind of occupy the space that the RRT used to occupy. But I also remember that the RRT basically quit. Can you remind us why they quit and how if we stand up a group that does something similar, how do we make it work for the people who actually have to do this work too? Because we have been in this space and have had some struggles.
I can talk to my understanding, and I believe there was a letter published by the commander at the time who can go into much more specifics. In general, though, I believe the team felt they were asked to do a very difficult job, didn't have the requisite support, and were being held to a different standard than the public when that came out. And without getting into facts, I think for that's the opinion I got and the feeling I got after talking to the members and who we did talk to and reading the letter.
Okay, thank you very much. No more questions for the panel on
Thank
my
you,
side.
Commissioner Maps. I have one thought. I know that you called out when the feds came in July, correct, as inflammatory. And as somebody that was campaigning in a special election that summer, someone that was going down the protest, it was big, it was very impactful. And my question is this, it also started to dissipate, and it seemed like we were starting to move into a new phase. And then the feds sent people here. And it clearly changed the trajectory of the next X amount of days. I'd like to hear more about that. All I heard was, I saw inflammatory, but I want to hear what your opinions are on how that triggered, if you will, the rest of the summer and into the fall. And I think it's very important to do this in the backdrop of we were talking about how we work with other jurisdictions and locally. That's one thing, but this was very different. I don't recall the mayor, I wasn't on city council then, saying, please, President, send these people to Portland. So let's get that out into the public discussion right now.
You know, to some extent, it's hard to look at what happened on the street without also looking at what happened in the sort of rhetoric around Portland at that time. And the sort of drumbeat, the steady drumbeat of messaging from federal officials about sort of, you know, a quote unquote sort of out of control, lawless environment and city, which, as we talk about priming of officers earlier in the context of the PPB, all of that was priming for federal personnel who are being sent here with a steady drumbeat of messaging. You know, we saw a much greater degree of conflict around the federal courthouse after federal personnel were dispatched to Portland. As you suggested, Commissioner, the protest activity had largely self-extinguished might be too strong a word, but had significantly quelled before Operation Diligent Valor went into effect, and it was like a match set to flame. As soon as federal personnel got on the ground, the level of conflict around the Hatfield Courthouse was extremely significant, pervasive. There was significant use of force by federal officers towards protesters. Federal personnel were themselves hurt, and we also can't look at that time period without looking at what happened immediately after, when the OSP assumed control and articulated a very different public philosophy for the management of these events. OSP immediately said, the superintendent said, you know, we want to de-escalate, we want to minimize conflict, we want to resolve incidents without reliance on force when possible, and all of that messaging contributed to immediately reducing the level of tension and the level of use of force that was happening around the Hatfield Courthouse and elsewhere throughout the city. So it was, from our perspective, you know, undeniably extremely inflammatory, and we were, you know, very happy to see a different philosophy articulated and put into practice by the OSP.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Yeah, your experience on the ground was like an invasive species came in and just, it really was fascinating. And it also felt very political in the reelection year, and like we're a backdrop of a reelection commercial for a said candidate. And so I think that Portlanders could share in some of that angst on no matter how they were feeling about the issue. And so I just wanted to make sure that we spent some more time on how disruptive that was to what we were experiencing here in Portland. And I felt for the police officers that had been doing this nightly, and I can only imagine the fatigue, and then that taking off, and then not seeming like all the arrows were pointing in the right direction. It didn't seem like we were all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. So I really think it's important when we look at 2020 to look at the impact of the feds coming in to Portland.
No, I think that's spot on, and I'll just add to that that many people have no reason to distinguish between local, state, or federal police officers. They're just police to many people, and I don't say that in any way. That's not a criticism. It's just a reality that most people don't have enough contact with law enforcement to really make those fine-grained distinctions. So when people would see footage of problematic uses of force in Portland by police officers who happened to be associated with the federal government, they would blame, in some cases, the PPB. So it was not only the conduct of federal personnel was not only sort of inflammatory on the streets, but it was highly inflammatory in the relationship of the community with the Portland Police Bureau.
Thank you. I have one other question, and it's like counting receipts. Perhaps it's because of the famous elk and how expensive that's been to restore and bring back. I actually found the $15 million figure on damage to public and private spaces to be a conservative, maybe lowball number. But before I think that I know what I'm talking about, could you explain to me the methodology of coming up with that number?
It's based on a couple different estimates that were provided to us, and I think I know there was a survey done of local businesses as well that had a much higher number, and I think likelihood it's in between that 15 million and a much higher number. But that was what seemed to be the most reliable estimate we could pull from what we were.
I can only imagine how imperfect it was, but the effort is what we're looking at here. So you were able to reach out to the private sector and get...
Yeah, part of the information did come from business owners within the downtown area.
Okay, appreciate that. Mayor Wheeler, would you like to ask any questions? I know you've had more time to look at this and probably been in discussion.
No, I'm pretty well versed on it. So at this point, if nobody else has any questions, I'll move the report.
Oh, great. So we have a motion to move the report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Keelan, please call the roll.
Gonzalez.
So appreciative of the comprehensive report here. 2020 has left scars in our city. Some of those cuts have still not been healed. We're trying to move forward. We're still, there's broad differences in opinion on some aspects of what occurred in 2020. I think some of those things we're coming closer together, and others may linger for a while. I think this is an important input in some of the technical assessment that needs to be done for Portland Police's performance. Hopefully we can learn from it, build a stronger and more responsive police department going forward that Portlanders have trust in and that they feel is accountable. So I really appreciate your work. I learned a lot. I'm an aye.
Maps.
I'll just echo everything that Commissioner Gonzalez just said. I very much appreciate the report and the dialogue, and I look forward to seeing you back here in about six months for the follow-up on how the city is doing in terms of implementation. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This was a great conversation. I appreciate your leadership. You all seem like a pretty tight team, and it was very comprehensive. We're a very resilient city, and I was happy to hear that you thought that people are quite direct and honest about their feelings. And I think even though it's been 3 years almost, it's very raw for a lot of us. And I really think that you did a commendable job bringing the total scenario of what we experienced. And in some ways, having some space from then to really reflect is a really good effort. I know that we have an opportunity to learn from this, and we are, but we really, I think for me, it's going to be what we send back after 180 days. And so I know that the mayor will bring us up to speed on that process with the chief, and I know that we all look forward to be engaged in those conversations, because this is an opportunity to really learn from perhaps an incident that lasted longer than anyone would have ever imagined, and there's just so much rich case study information in there for the Portland Police, for other police jurisdictions throughout the country. And so let's definitely learn from this and continue to move on and build trust. All right, so I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your presentation, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person. The summer flu caught me, and I didn't want to take the risk of spreading that around the council chamber.
Thank you.
As difficult as it is to look back on probably the most challenging times in the history of our city, I can't underscore enough the value of reflecting on those challenges and finding a path forward in the spirit of improvement and growth. There's something in here for all of us. This report offers valuable guidance and expertise to help illuminate that constructive path, and I want to thank you for the thoroughness as well as the objectivity of your work. It's abundantly clear to me that your team embraced the need to understand the complex, and yes, I'd say it even often emotionally charged perspectives of many of the stakeholders impacted. Your expert perspectives and constructive inputs greatly appreciated, particularly in the context of balancing public safety with protecting important constitutional rights. I also just want to say, because I don't think it got said today, there is much that the Portland Police Bureau could do differently based on this report. There's much I could do differently based on this report with the benefit of hindsight. But sometimes I think we forget that our police officers are men and women with families, with children, with other pressures in their life. And we put them under a pressure cooker that I don't think any public employees have experienced prior, and certainly not since, from my perspective. So I want to thank them for their humility in approaching this report and looking at the ideas, Chief, that you think could help improve things and move us along. And I'm committed to be your partner in doing that. So thanks to everybody. Thank you for the report. I vote aye.
Okay, the report passes 4-0, and thank you for all being here. We'll go to the next item. Before that, can we take a 5-minute break? Okay.
Recording stopped.
accept the 2022 annual report of the Portland Police Bureau.
Thank you. Mayor Wheeler, I'll hand this over to you for introduction of this item.
Thank you, and I will quickly hand it over to the chief staff. It looks like Mike Frome is here to give the report.
Great. Welcome, Chief Lavelle.
Oh, Chief Lavelle, sorry, I couldn't see very clearly. Good to see you.
Hello, Mayor, Commissioners, and don't worry, I am often mistaken for Deputy Chief Frome. Good afternoon. I'm Chief Chuck Lavelle, and I'm here today to present the Portland Police Bureau's 2022 annual report. I'm going to share with you an overview of the major issues from last year, as well as accomplishments and challenges. Before I get started, I wanted to tell you how very proud I am of our sworn and professional staff. The resiliency and commitment they continue to show. I want to thank them for the amazing work, professionalism, and compassion they demonstrate every day. Last month, I had the opportunity to present this information to the 3 precincts at the precinct meetings, and I was pleased by the amount of support we received from residents who want to engage with police and help address public safety issues. Okay, we can start the PowerPoint. And before I discuss the events of last year, I want to thank the City Council for the support you have demonstrated towards us and the recognition of the need to build back PPB. Deputy Chief Mike Frome was here last week to discuss our staffing and the project for additional overtime funds. I want to be considerate of your time, so I will not be discussing the staffing numbers in detail today to avoid being too repetitive. As you know, it remains a significant challenge for us. Next slide. So let's start with our accomplishments. Our equity and inclusion team completed the Bureau's 5-year racial equity plan and continues recruiting members for the Equity Advisory Council. The Bureau's recruitment efforts were revamped, and the Bureau received 1,513 applications for police officers, hiring 80 new officers. I will tell you up front that 63 sworn members either resigned or retired last year, so that's only a net gain of 17. However, we're proud of the hiring efforts and certainly the number of applicants. We revised and created more than 20 directives in 2022, including ones for procedural justice and wellness. Additionally, the team updated the suite of mental health-related policies that are the center focus of our DOJ settlement agreement. We also overhauled the Bureau's policies pertaining to reporting and reviewing uses of force, including establishing clearer standards for when force is authorized and the accompanying reporting and investigation requirements. And finally, we updated policies related to foot pursuits and consent searches. Next slide. Our training division was busy as always. They conducted academies for in-service, advanced academy, cadets, sergeant's academy, leadership training, and more. They're also responsible for training all of our recruits and public safety support specialists. They conducted training evals for most of its important programs to identify ways to enhance quality of training, maximize training time, and improve operations. Our wellness program continued to make investments with pilot programs for healthy food and sleep classes. Wellness remains a top priority to help with retention of our members, as well as increase morale by improving emotional, mental, and physical fitness of our members. Next slide. Despite our staffing levels, our precinct commanders were charged with using their resources as effectively as possible. They looked for ways to conduct missions, directed patrols, bicycle patrols, and neighborhood response team missions in ways that impact the rises in crime documented in the report. As you know, stolen vehicles have increased drastically in 2022. Officers also noticed a nexus between stolen vehicles and illegal weapons. Responding to this trend, our East Precinct began a series of stolen vehicle missions, or as we call them, SVOs. In order to ensure these missions were informed and data-driven, PPB SVO leadership approached researchers at OHSU who agreed to review both the data and methodology proposed by our team at East. The partnership has shown incredible results. The data showed in the non-evidence-based practice missions, only 1 in every 31 vehicles stopped was an occupied stolen vehicle, and the arrest ratio was 1 in every 6. In the missions conducted after the evidence-based practices were applied, 1 in every 6 vehicles stopped by the team is a stolen, and someone is arrested once in every 3 stops. Next slide. We reformulated the entertainment detail in 2022. As people began coming back to the bars and late-night establishments, we observed an increase in the number of shootings in these areas. We responded by restaffing this detail to provide patrol coverage during peak hours. The number of shootings after the entertainment detail was reconstituted last year were 0. Street racing has been a chronic problem in recent years. Illegal street racing continues to be a seasonal event, drawing hundreds to these dangerous events. Many people are armed. Often they are occurring in multiple locations at the same time. Missions were conducted in last year in response to street racing. Here again, we have observed results. Last year, we anticipated several hundred events, but there were only several dozen. We need the appropriate resources to continue the good work resulting from these missions by putting together teams for this purpose. We also worked with our legislative partners to pass Senate Bill 615, which increases penalties for street racing. This bill becomes effective in September. New slide. Our neighborhood response teams are on the front line of our response to the rising crime. They were highly effective at addressing cases of criminal behavior involving larger groups. We hope to expand their work more broadly citywide, as there are several other areas where this work is needed. Our Central Precinct Bike Squad was also very effective downtown and in Northwest, especially addressing fentanyl use, illegal weapons, and stolen vehicles. These results show the value of proactive policing, and we need appropriate staffing to grow the work and tremendous results of their efforts. Our behavioral health unit continues to be a significant resource. They did around 99 trainings and events last year, not only within the city, but also with private organizations and other law enforcement personnel. Our Office of Community Engagement integrated the Bureau's Bias Crime Unit with community advisory councils to improve communication, trust-earning efforts, and to allow for a cultural exchange. The office also facilitated many other community meetings, workshops, and cultural engagements that help foster meaningful relationships. The Bureau continued conducting its Community Police Academy, in which community members work with police officer partners in day-long settings of classroom and practical scenarios. PPB also continued its Community Active Shooter Preparedness, or CASP, which has delivered about 200 classes to safety-impacted community organizations and businesses since 2013. While we had accomplishments for which I'm very proud of the employees of the Bureau, we also faced many challenges. As I mentioned, staffing is a big part of the conversation. I'll just update you that we currently have 294 patrol officers. As you know, this has affected our ability to meet our minimum staffing on the street, response times, and our ability for proactive policing. Thank you to the members of City Council for allowing us to offer double overtime in the short term in order to see if that can affect our numbers on the street.
Chief Lavelle, I'm interrupting. When you say 294, I'm assuming this is at the end of 2022, or is it today?
No, that's currently.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure. I'm trying to do the rearview mirror thing, but you tricked me. So right then you got present.
Yeah, and those are officers who are assigned to patrol, so that's
Got it.
at the 3 precincts.
Okay.
While we have not been seeing the attrition that we saw over the last few years, we do know that as many as 100 sworn members are eligible to retire in 2023. Because of this, the Bureau will need to be ready to maintain a high rate of hiring. So far this year, we have hired 46 officers. We've had 39 separations for a net gain of 7. We also continue to have a large number of officers in the training phase at any given time, and anyone hired today cannot go to the State Academy for several months due to the backlog. I know they're working on that, and we will be able to get some more people through sooner than we thought. The need to recruit and retain qualified candidates is critical for us to address. Just a few more notes on staffing. We often talk about patrol, but we also face staffing issues throughout the Bureau, including our investigations branch. It's important to discuss our professional staff, who are the foundation of our Bureau. Last year, we hired 52, but we lost 34 professional staff. Our Records Division staffing was the lowest it had been in modern history. I'm happy to say its staffing has gotten better. Once some people got off training, we'll be able to better address this backlog. Next slide. Let's turn to crime statistics. In 2022, person crimes decreased slightly by 2%, but remained above the prior 5-year average. We continued to see gun violence. This number remained fairly stable, with only 7 fewer incidents reported in 2022, for a total of 1,308 incidents. Shooting incidents were 48% higher than the prior 3-year average. Next slide. There were 94 homicides in Portland in 2022, including 76 that involved a firearm. This was an increase of 6% over 2021. Last year, I made the decision to temporarily shutter the cold case unit. This was in order to create 3 teams of detectives. This gives us more effective coverage to address the drastic rise in homicides. In the 10 years prior to 2020, Portland averaged about 25 homicide offenses per year, so you can see the significant jump. We've had a 60% reduction in staffing in our narcotics and organized crime unit, which investigates drug traffickers. Meanwhile, our community is seeing an increase in overdose deaths. We received some figures recently from our narcotics unit, and they are startling. There are the overdose cases that are reported to PPB. You can see the overdose deaths per year here. 159 during 2022, with the majority of them being fentanyl. But as of a couple weeks ago, we were at 178. This could be almost 300 by the end of the year at the current pace. The availability of illegal drugs continues to increase and remains at an all-time high. Property crimes increased 11% over the rate in 2021 and was 20% above the prior 5-year average. In 2022, vandalism increased by more than 2,500 offenses compared to 2021 and was up 66% compared to the prior 5-year average. 2022 had the highest volume of motor vehicle theft on record, with 11,098 offenses reported, a 20% increase over 2021 and a 51% increase over the prior 5-year average. Burglaries were up 17% compared to the prior year and 26% compared to the prior 5-year average. Car prowls, meaning the theft of items from inside a car, increased by 12%. Reports of robberies at businesses increased 41% in 2022. In 2022, 68 people died on Portland streets. 32 were pedestrians. This is the highest number since 1948. As you can see, the numbers here are broken out in other categories. This past spring, I relaunched the traffic division on a limited basis. I'm happy we have the motorcycles back doing traffic enforcement and focusing on the high crash corridors. And finally, it's important to note that our partners also face challenges, and we have to look at the entire justice system as a whole. The jail still continues to be challenged with restrictions on booking, and the district attorney has also discussed their own staffing challenges and backlog. Thank you again for your support this year and for working to build back our city and improve public safety. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Lavelle, for that presentation. Colleagues, do we have any
We have
testimony?
one person signed up.
Okay. Is it okay if we do that first, everyone? All right, let's do it.
Okay, we have Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch, online.
Welcome, Dan.
I'm just getting geared up here. Sorry about that. Good afternoon again. I'm still Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch, and I'm still only speaking on behalf of our organization this afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for having this presented at City Council. I our organization, sent comments into the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing at the end of June that were quite extensive. They were 3 pages long. And the only thing that we can see that got changed between then and when the final report was done was 2 typos that we pointed out. So that's kind of discouraging. I also attended one of the 3 precinct meetings, and they are handled in a format where the public information officer takes your questions from the chat and relays them to the chief, but often cuts out important parts of what we're trying to convey. And I don't think that's very community friendly. I don't think the chief would be offended by the questions. We've been talking with this chief for many years. I don't think he'd be offended by the questions we were asking, but they got toned down by the public information officer. So in summary, these are some of the comments that we made. We talked about shootings and deaths, and as the report pointed out, Portland police shot at 9 people last year. 4 died, 3 were wounded, 1 wasn't hit, and 1 wasn't known because the suspect drove away. The report talks about the focused intervention team, which started up early last year, and it casually mentioned that it was a challenge that 7 of the 12 officers were on leave because that unit was involved in 3 of those officer-involved shootings. We asked the question, do Black Lives Matter? There had not been a shooting of a black person by Portland police since January of 2019, and then there were 2 in November last year, but that wasn't mentioned explicitly. And one of them, the grand jury only just completed itself after 9 months, which we don't know why that took so long. There was another young black man that was shot in July this year, but we'll leave that for next year's annual report. We found that the word accountability only appeared once in the entire report in the context of holding officers responsible for policy violations. We talked a little bit about how force data didn't really focus on how many times people with mental health concerns were subjected to force by police. It just said 0.023% of encounters, which doesn't give you a number. We talked about crowd control, which we just got done talking about that more broadly, and mentioned that the coalition of advisory groups that are the people who are inside the police bureau advising police are sessions to talk about crowd control, although I didn't think many of them might have been out on the streets protesting. Engaging with the federal government was another topic that we brought up, and we were actually thankful that the Portland Police Bureau mentioned that 1/3 of the officers who were planning to leave decided to stay, at least in part because of the wellness program, but that information was kind of buried. So the last point I wanted to make is that we heard that the records department was very short-staffed, but they hired, I think, somewhere between on the body camera program late last year, and I don't know what they've been doing between the end of last year and when the program just started, but it seems like that should have been able to help get the records division back on track. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Colleagues, open it up to the floor. Questions?
I'll jump in if I may.
Sure, please.
Chief, thank you so much for this report. There's some really encouraging news here, and there's some obvious challenges. First of all, I really want to give my congratulations to you and your team for the great work that's been done on the stolen car missions. That is just a very exciting project. Really appreciate the work being done by the Entertainment District. If you haven't gone down to the Entertainment District at night on a weekend sometime, there are literally sometimes thousands of kids out having a great time, and for the most part being safe, and that we really have the team in front of us to thank for that, and business owners who have all kind of really come together to make our downtown safe on the weekends. Also very much appreciate the progress that we're making on street racing too. That is dangerous and utterly unnecessary. But when I look at the report, there are at least 2 areas that obviously cause us a ton of concern. One is the continued proliferation of shooting incidents in particular, and also the very disturbing news that you just brought us about fentanyl. And I think my questions would be to, and I know this is a backward-looking report, but kind of looking forward. What plans, do we have any new plans or new strategies around bringing down our homicide rates? You know, I'm looking at our change in our 3-year average in your report, and, it looks like it's up, homicides are up 61% over our 3-year average. That's a lot. Why don't we start with homicides? What's the lay of the land looking forward for murder?
Yeah, looking forward, Commissioner, we're looking to implement the ceasefire model. Our team just recently did a trip to Oakland with members from the city and some of our partners to look at the next steps in the implementation of that model.
Yeah.
And that's something we've been looking to do for some time. And I think now we're closer than ever. So I think that will help as we structure our work and our partners' work to really kind of focus in on those folks who we think are most at risk of being victims or involved in gun violence. So that's really the next step around the homicide piece. And I think, as we learn more and see what our role as PPB will look like under that model, it might force us to look at how we structure our detective division and some of our homicide detectives and those resources that focus on homicide specifically.
Okay, I'm excited I'm glad to hear that, and I'm certainly, in my role in council, I'll do everything I can to make sure that that's a success. What about fentanyl? I think the news that really has gotten broken today is we had 137-ish fentanyl deaths at this point in the year, which indicates that we could end the year with around 300. I know this is a challenging problem. What's the plan?
I think that number was around 178, which puts us on a pace for about 300. And for us right now, we spend a lot of our resources investigating overdose deaths.
Yeah.
And the goal is to lead back to where the source of the fentanyl came from. I recently met with some of our partners with the DEA to discuss kind of what their role is and how we can collaborate and synthesize some of our efforts. They really focus on some of the larger suppliers, not so much the street level dealing, but they're working hard to look at some of the bigger cases and maybe the bigger importers into the city. And we're really trying to focus our efforts primarily with the bike squad and our downtown resources to address the street level dealing. I think some of the legislative fixes that have been discussed and implemented could potentially be helpful, but there's definitely a lot of people on the law enforcement side, the prosecution side that are really trying to hone in on what we can do to get a handle on it.
Okay, well, I look forward to making progress in this space. I mean, I'll point out that obviously this is an important public health issue. I think it's pretty clear at this point that fentanyl is deeply intertwined with our houselessness problem at this point. I don't see how Portland gets back on its feet until we get our hands around this really challenging drug. Thank you very much, President Ryan. I'll hand it back to you.
Oh, thanks. Commissioner Gonzalez? Go ahead. You want to go first? I'm gathering thoughts.
Thank you. It's a good report. I want to digest some pieces of it. I have some areas I want to circle back with on, in particular in the drug area. But I think I'm good for now. This is very, very helpful. I saved all my questions for the report before, so it's
Understood.
Good. All right. Chief, it's good to see you. Thank you. I was happy to hear that the wellness program received a lot of attention, especially after the report we just heard. I can't imagine how exhausting and taxing it was for the police officers to be on the streets for that many months in a row. And I think the mayor spoke to that very elegantly. So thank you for that. I enjoyed listening about the data-driven policy and the partnership that you have with OHSU. And I'm now thinking about it. I wasn't there for the entire session, but I really enjoyed when you had the session with the people from Oakland. Is that who you just mentioned? You're going to, okay. And so one thing I've learned about leading an organization that's data-driven in previous jobs is how important it is to make it a part of the culture. So it doesn't mean anything if we look at the inputs and the output, put in the inputs, and then we look at the outputs, but we don't incorporate them into how we're learning from the data to keep improving. And so I'd like to just hear some stories on how is that being incorporated into the culture. And I know this was one pilot perhaps, but how is that pilot taking off?
Yeah, I think for our folks, it's really something we've looked forward to engaging in for a long time. We've taken the rise in shootings and homicides to heart here in Portland, because that typically has not been something we've seen here. And we've got a very dedicated group of folks investigating both on our homicide team and our ECST, Enhanced Community Safety team, and our Focus Intervention team, who are deeply, deeply committed to reducing the amount of gun violence. And I think for them, it's really about how do we get to a place where we can focus on the people who we feel are most at risk of engaging in gun violence or being victims of gun violence. And I think to have some direct ways to connect with them, and not just from an enforcement perspective, but to offer them services, to connect with them and see if there's things that we can do as a city or as resource providers to help them not be in that life is really important. And I think if you do gun violence work over a period of time, you see patterns repeating, and you see people and families who really are in need of some type of support and help, and looking for ways to actually be able to provide that is key. So I think it is something we can fold into the culture, but we have very, very committed people doing this work who want to impact people's lives for the positive and get them out of the position where we feel they might be at risk of gun violence.
That sounds good. I know when I've used it to help with culture change work and improve practices, the more the officers, the people on the ground are engaged, the better, and then they see themselves in the data. And also there's that humility of going, oh, what we've been doing isn't working. And the data is now telling us that. It's kind of uncomfortable to accept that sometimes. I'm not trying to project what that is, but I just really am excited that you're working with professionals in that regard. And I thought the synergy that you were creating with the people from Oakland is on the right track, because you could tell they let up. And when they let up, the results went the wrong way. So you can't let up once you start doing that. When I heard about Senate Bill 615, and I know is it September that it's being?
Yes.
Okay. What are we doing to prepare for that? Because clearly we've been waiting. Sometimes you feel like you're waiting for Salem to pass something so then we can do what common sense says we're supposed to do. So tell me what the plan is so that we can receive it and hit the ground running with Senate Bill 615.
Sure. So, Commissioner, what we're looking to do now is put in place the ability to utilize the tools that 615 will give us around forfeiture. And I think it really serves as a deterrent. A lot of the folks who we're seeing out engaging in street racing and engaging in the car demonstrations and intersection takeovers, a lot of them don't want to lose their cars. So I think the ability to be able to tow and seize cars is going to be a huge deterrent on the front end, which we hope will help lessen the amount of people participating in the events. So we're currently setting up our forms, working with the DA's office, who will do the forfeiture piece to make sure we can streamline that process. And there's a piece of it too that's really around messaging on the front end too. So we're working on that as well.
So you would say the implementation of a policy, which we all know sometimes policies don't get implemented very well, so that you're ready to receive the implementation of this policy. And you already have the practices. And all right, that sounds good. Because we were talking about mutual aid network earlier, I think nothing could be more important than discussing behavioral health unit and how it's working with other professionals in other mutual aid networks. Commissioner Mapps spelled out all the grim numbers on overdoses of drugs. It's beyond, it's really difficult to digest. It's so alarming. It kind of feels like where we were with gun violence a couple of years ago when that was escalating. It's crazy. So who are some of the mutual aid network partners that PPB is working with on this crisis?
We work with a lot of city partners. We've actually worked very closely with Street Response. Our BHU folks do the follow-up to calls that our officers take on the street that have a mental health nexus. So we have our ECIT, our enhanced CIT, that can kind of respond to a call as it's happening on the street to provide support, but then they can do a BHU referral. We call it a BERS, BHU Electronic Referral System, and that gets sent to our BHU so they can go out and have a follow-up contact and just see what resources are needed. Is there a way where we can bring our resources to bear to help this person maybe not be in the situation that our officers found them in? So we work with a host of service providers. Our BHU folks, one of the things that they're really strong in, one of the many things, is their network of connections with providers. We work with Golden West, Cascadia, and many, many other county and city providers.
because you mentioned Cascadia, I mean, something that you and I have talked about, and anyone would when you have a dialogue about this issue, is if you're able to be successful in the first response to these incidents, and you revive them literally so they don't die with Narcan and such, where do you take them? I think that's always been the big conversation. So with your partners, how's that conversation going? I know there's the Beacon Group and such.
Yeah, well, I think when we lost the sobering centerpiece, that left a gap on a place to take people who had an immediate need and didn't have the ability to care for themselves. So I think now there's always that conversation about restoring that capability somewhere in the city. We do have a good network with hospitals. We work closely with Unity. I think it really just depends on the person's particular situation. But I think for us, it's really important to note that we are only as successful as the next level of resources. Officers generally don't have the ability to remedy a situation on the street for the long term. We encounter something and look for where's the next step in the process, and we end up taking people somewhere. Sometimes it's jail, sometimes it's a hospital, sometimes it's home. But wherever that next place is, we're dependent on them being successful in their piece of the puzzle, or else we end up just kind of repeating that cycle. So we're very heavily dependent on the efficiency and effectiveness of all the partners in the system.
I want to end with this comment and question, and that is most of our interactions have been connected to how we're building a better system for those that are chronically homeless to becoming stable. And in that, we've had to do a lot of impact reduction work. And I think the SSCC team has really been a phenomenal development. That's the coordination that you're seeing and the silos coming down. But I want to particularly discuss when we were taking that area along the Peninsula Crossing, along the cut in St. John's, which was just inhabited for over a decade, some say between 12 and 15 years, as a place where organized crime was taking place in terms of drug trade and such, sex trade. We interrupted that habitat, if you will, to build the Safe West Village. And in like any habitat, it had to disperse elsewhere. So it went out into the streets of the neighborhood. And I just want to say how grateful I am that you've been responsive in the North Precinct, and we have to continue to not let up on that. But I also want to say I know how difficult it is to just constantly see, there's just so many balls in the air all the time, and it's where do you put your priorities? And so I'm well aware that that's challenging, but I want to thank you for being responsive when we had that very grim situation when we first opened up the Safe West Village. I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. That's all I have. Mayor Wheeler, would you like to say anything or go ahead and move us along with the motion?
I will move to accept the report. Thank you, Chief.
Second.
And Mayor has moved and Commissioner Mapps has seconded. Go ahead and read the roll.
Gonzalez.
Thank you for the comprehensive report. Always learn from these. I vote aye.
Mapps.
Yeah, I want to thank the chief for the report. I think there's some really excellent news here, especially in the context of street racing, car thefts, also really great work hiring too. We're finally moving the ship in the right direction. I remain deeply concerned about homicides and fentanyl in particular. Colleagues, I'll just point out, our fentanyl problem seems to be increasing exponentially. So I think I take some reassurance in the plans that the police chief has put forward, but I think we need to do more in this space if we're going to get the city back on track. Despite those concerns, I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yeah, it's good to see you here. Thanks for being here. It was good dialogue. I really appreciate the report. I want to touch on something that I want Portlanders to know, and that is that your swearing-in ceremonies have been very inspiring this past year. They're probably always inspiring, but I've just been going to them the last 18 months. And what I've noticed is there are more people in attendance. There's more families. It feels very warm. It's also very diverse. And you also hear people wanting to come to Portland to be a police officer because they want to be community police officers. They want to be relational with Portlanders. And so I can sense the culture is evolving because of what I'm experiencing at the swearing-in ceremonies. And your tone that you set when you greet the families and the sworn-in officers is quite inspiring. So I just wanted to acknowledge the momentum we have, and I know that it's challenging because you have people that are retiring, and so it's always a little disappointing when you see the net gain. So I hope that this year we will have the biggest net gain, and we're all here to root you on, as we really do. Obviously, we're having an issue with numbers, and we have so many priorities, as was mentioned by Commissioner Mapps, and it's like, where do you juggle them? So anyway, just know that we're watching, and I will continue to show up at those because, quite frankly, it's very helpful for me to feel that momentum and to really experience what I think is becoming the top-notch police force in the country. And you really are feeling more like peace officers for the city of Portland. And I want to thank you for that. And I accept the report.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Wheeler.
Thanks for your presentation, Chief. I want to express my appreciation for this comprehensive annual report, and also just acknowledge the work that goes into preparing to present it to both council as well as the community. And I know that by now you've walked this report around quite a few times since June, including a PSEP meeting and at each of the 3 precincts again here. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate it. This report is also important as a reflection point that we can rely upon to inform how we can best serve the community with equity as well as procedural justice at the forefront. While there is always more work we can do, I'm encouraged by the dedication and the willingness I've seen throughout PPB to continue to grow and to innovate. In 2022, we also began the foundational work that led to the increased capacity at DPSST. That would not have happened without you, Chief, and your colleagues. This will help us move forward with our new hires and clear the bottleneck. That's something we've been asking for years, and finally the city delivered. Our recruiting and staffing continue to be very positive. For the first time in years, hiring has outpaced retirements and separations, which obviously is a great milestone, but there's more to do. Public safety is at the forefront of the public consciousness, and PPB is at the tip of that spear. Police work is as difficult as it is important, and there are many good men and women rising to the challenge each and every day, and I want to thank them. The Bureau has done a great deal of innovative, data-driven public safety work. We heard a little bit about that today, including the stolen vehicle missions, but they've also done it around the retail theft missions, gun violence, the ceasefire efforts, and in other areas. It's important to acknowledge this good work and steady progress, regardless of whether it occurs in the ordinary day-to-day interaction with the community or ways that draw more public interest. With that in mind, I want to thank you, Chief, for your work, for your commitment to continuous learning and growth at the Bureau, and for your continued excellence. I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The report is accepted 4-0. And colleagues, thank you for a wonderful session. Mayor, rest up. We need you healthy, and the meeting's now adjourned.